Hello and welcome to Archive Dive. I'm Terry Cadeau, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Each month, we dip into files on historic events, people, and places in Superior and Douglas County with local historians. Today we have the story about Mary Chapman, a young widow who was the organist for 25 years at Cathedral, who walked there every day year-round. In October of 1944, her son Robert was killed in action in World War II. His body was not brought back to Superior, and he was buried in the Netherlands. An article appeared a few years later in the Telegram about a woman in the Netherlands who was taking care of his grave. The two women, Mary and the woman caring for his grave, had the opportunity to meet twice in the following years. Helping us dive into the story today is local historian Teddy Meronek. Welcome, Teddy.
Hi, Terry.
So talk to me a little bit about Mary Chapman. How did you first hear about her?
I found her the way I've found so many stories about Superior by looking through, at that time it was the Evening Telegram, best sort of information that you can find about local people and local history. I guess what drew me to her is that I thought, this woman, she's a widow and she makes her living by playing the organ for Cathedral and also for weddings. She was left with 7 children.
Oh, wow.
When her husband died in 1925. They had been married in 1911 in a wedding ceremony that I thought was very interesting. Her brother married her groom's sister.
Okay, sure. Yep.
So it was a double wedding, but usually they're the two sisters that have a double wedding. But no, it was brothers and sisters who had the double wedding. So they got married in 1911 and had 7 children, and he died
when she was just 25.
Yeah, left her a young widow, and they had moved to Minong. They had lived in Superior. She grew up in Superior. She got her start playing organ at St. Patrick's Church in Billings Park.
Okay.
She said one day the priest came up to her and had known that she had taken piano lessons and just said, well, today you're going to go play the organ at Mass. And she said her mother had played organ, but she didn't have any experience. But that's what she ended up doing for a living for 33 years. So she must have been good at it.
That's quite a challenge to go straight piano to organ, because that's a lot more pedals involved.
Yeah. I give her credit. I don't know how she did it with those kids because I think the oldest was probably about 15 or something. And her youngest, who was Robert, who was killed in World War II, was only about 3 years old when her husband died.
Oh, wow.
So she moved back to Superior. For most of the time, she lived with her sister Jeanette in various places around town, but it must have been a struggle. But apparently she only played for masses at Cathedral, but she would play for weddings. I think she said she had played in every church in Douglas County.
Wow.
For weddings. And if you go back and you look at the Telegram and you do, a digital search for Mary Chapman, you see her at every wedding practically that's in the newspaper. She must have been good. And she said if the choir didn't show up or they didn't have a singer, she could also sing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
A woman of many talents.
Yes, indeed.
And able to use them to make a living.
Yes, which was hard in those days. I mean, he had 7 kids to support. She had a big family. She came from a family of 8, so I'm sure she had a lot of support that way. But, there weren't the safety nets back then that there are now for people left with all those children. So I know her oldest son delivered newspapers. He just delivered the Telegram. He had like about 160 people on his route.
That's quite a route. That's pretty good size, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing about this story is I knew that her son died in World War II and that his body was left in Europe. I didn't know how he had died. And I found out when I read the story in the Telegram, I started crying because I did not know what had happened to him. There's lots of people who died in World War II.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he was part of the 82nd Battalion that went in to liberate the Netherlands from the Germans. And they thought, I guess the high command thought it was going to be an easy... Well, they had heard that the only people that the Germans had left to fight were old men and children. And they didn't think they were going to encounter what they had encountered before. Okay. But it turned into a terrible fight. And, it wasn't liberated. He was there in September and October of 1944, and the war wasn't over until almost a year later. So apparently 2 of the officers in his unit had been shot, and he went out and tried to help them, and he got struck by a bullet while he was going out there to help them, but he stayed there. He tried to bandage them up, and then he was carrying one of the men off the field. and he died. I've seen 21 or 22 years old. I've seen both ages, but way too young.
Right.
He was awarded the Silver Star,
Okay.
and he got a couple other citations and also a citation from the Queen of the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
But I think the best thing about this story is the relationship that happened between Mary and the woman who took care of her son's grave in the Netherlands.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
There's a huge cemetery there, which I did not know. And what happens when they have these huge battles, they have no way of taking care of the corpses and sending them home right away, so they bury them. And after the war, they gave families the option. They could either leave their loved one there, or they would actually, the government would send them back
Okay.
to where they were gonna be buried in the United States. So in this cemetery, it's in sort of the south of the Netherlands. There are over 8,000 US casualties
Okay.
buried there. And it's taken care of by the people who live in the Netherlands, and especially in the village near where the cemetery is. And also there are people in Germany and Belgium who also help. But since 1945 was the year when they decided that they were going to do this, that they were going to be responsible, the people in the community were going to be responsible for the graves. There has never been a time when someone has not been taken care of. Families
Wow.
usually adopt a grave and they pass it down through generations.
Oh, wow.
Or else there's a waiting list for people to help, which I found just
That's incredible.
incredible. They bring flowers on Memorial Day. And I think at one time during the year, they put photos of the people who have died on the crosses that are on their graves. They have a huge wall of pictures of the people who are still missing in action, have never been found. And so this woman who took care of Robert's grave, she and Mary got in contact with one another. And Mary and her sister went over there. They went to Europe. They took a 2-month
Wow.
vacation, I guess, in Europe. She and her sister sailed over there. And they went to this conference, since they were both devout Catholics. They went to this conference in Spain, and they spent some time there, but they also went to Italy, and they went to France, and they went to Germany, and
Oh,
they
that's
went
quite
to
a
Belgium.
journey. Love
Yes.
it.
And they ended up in Holland where Robert's buried, and they stayed at the home of this woman, this Nora. Oh, I can't remember her last name now. But she invited them to stay there, and so they spent 4 days there with her, and then they went back, and they went to Dublin, and they went to London, and then they sailed back to the United States. The next year, almost to the date, Nora came over and stayed with Mary, but she had other families in the United States whose sons' graves that she took care
Oh,
of,
wow. Okay,
and they
sure.
invited her to visit also.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
I guess the thing I learned from this is I had no idea. I really had no idea that there were people that did this, that
No.
adopted these graves. But I guess the Dutch people were just so grateful that, the Americans had come in and did what they did to help liberate the country. There's 2 people I know of that were soldiers that died in the war, one in World War I and now Robert in World War II, but the man who died in World War I is buried in France.
Okay.
And in his case, the government paid for, like, wives and mothers and relatives to go over there to visit their graves.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
it is pretty amazing.
I know you said there was a story about it in the telegram, and I'm curious, did they get anything from Nora about why she decided to take on these families?
Because they were thankful
Yeah.
that the United States came in and did this, because they were occupied by Germany. And how are they gonna get out of this war? They'd been involved in it for 4 years. The end probably never seemed in sight, but then here come the Americans. They land on Normandy, and they're making their way across Europe. And unfortunately, the operation he was involved in was called Market Garden, and it was not successful,
No.
as successful as they had hoped it would
Sure.
be. But the man who was in charge, the general who was in charge of the 82nd Airborne, which Robert was in, he wrote a letter to Mary, and I read it, and I just thought, how do you do this time after time? Tell these people who lost someone there that they were, try to give them some comfort.
Right.
And he couldn't have known everyone, but he made the letter very personal.
Is that where he described what had happened when he had?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I read it, I just thought, you just think somebody gets shot, they're in a fight and they get shot, but he's saving people's lives
Yeah.
and gives up his own. I don't know. I guess I'm just too involved with what happened to him and how many people care about him.
Right.
People who didn't know him.
Yeah. And the fact that they do this for, you said, I think around 8,000 people?
8,000 people are buried. They had,
Americans,
yeah, I think there were probably about 16,000 people buried there in the beginning, but then a lot of them were, the bodies were returned home. So, but it's over 8,000. And then I think there are like 1,700 people that they have that are missing.
Wow.
In action. So they've never found their bodies. Yeah. But they are also remembered with their names or, on a monument there. So I would love to go there. There was, I think he was a major general with the Minnesota National Guard, and he came to speak at Greenwood Cemetery one year. It was Memorial Day. And he had been to the cemetery and he described it, and he was very moved. He had read about it and he thought, well, he and his wife were going on a trip to Europe, so
yeah,
they're going to stop there. And he said it was unbelievable how much these people cared about these men that they didn't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just shows such great kindness and empathy.
I know. We often forget about that. When you think of war, you just think of people fighting against each other. You don't really think about anything else. Like, we took care of it, now it's done.
Sure.
You don't think about people.
The ramifications.
Right. And that they're still going to be thankful 60 years later,
sure,
whatever. That's what amazes me. In fact, when I was doing this research, I had heard the term Operation Market Garden.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about the battle. And when I was doing some research online, they said that this was one of the battles that was covered in Band of Brothers.
Oh, sure.
I happen to have, I'm a big World War II. World War II is very interesting to me, and maybe you always like the era that you missed, but I had the DVD, so I watched that episode that was about it, and it was
Which episode is it?
It's episode number 4, and it's called Replacements. Guys who come into the group that.
Is it where the new people come in and they're like, yeah, let's go to battle, and you're like, you have no idea what you're coming up against.
And it was amazing how brutal it was, and how they didn't really think it was going to be that way, because they had been told, there's only old men and kids left.
Right.
But it wasn't that way. So I just don't know how you accept that when someone comes and I don't know if they came to the door then, if they sent a telegram. It's been various ways throughout the years how they let you know that someone has passed away. And I thought, how do you accept that? Your youngest son, you get him to that age and he's gone. Apparently he worked for the FBI before he went into the service. He had worked in the fingerprinting department in Washington, D.C. So, but I don't know how you ever cope with that, if you ever do. They had a mass said for him here, but, they don't have a tombstone or anything here in the cemetery for him since he's buried over there.
I wonder, just because she played the organ so often, I'm curious if she played for her own son's funeral or if she had somebody else do it.
I don't know.
I don't know which would be, it would be meaningful both ways. To have someone else do it would be kind and helpful, but then also to be able to play for your own, it'd be,
right.
I don't know. I feel like that might be too hard though.
Yeah. She seemed to be a very stoic person though, that she got through every crisis, and must have been her faith, I guess, her Catholic faith. But I don't know, that story touched me in such a way, because I thought, do you ever believe he's dead because you never saw him and there's no proof here? There's no body. There's no grave to go to. And does that remain unresolved through your whole life? And maybe it helped to go there and visit him. I'm sure it did.
And to see that he was being well looked after.
Yeah, that must have been
a comfort.
Very heartwarming for her, because, strangers. And apparently they practically fight over who's going to take care of the grave.
There's a waiting list.
Yeah,
that's incredible to me.
That they're never going to go
unlooked at. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that we would be the same.
Yeah.
But we've never, living here in the United States, we've never encountered anything like that.
Not quite, no.
Because the only war that's ever been fought here is the Civil War,
Well, and the American Revolution.
Yeah.
But again, those are quite different things.
We've never been invaded by an outside force except for the British, of course, but we took care of them. So, but in modern times. And, Europe
Right.
was involved in 2 world
Modern day.
wars
Right.
in, a short period of time. And then to have it as large as it was. And I mean, you have people from all over the world fighting in this war, but you can find it within your country to take care of them,
Right.
which I think is probably one of the best things I've ever heard. And to know that it's still going on, it gives you hope for humanity, I guess.
I'm curious now if they still keep track of who. I'm sure they keep track of who's keeping track of
Yeah.
who it is today who's keeping
Yeah,
track.
I might have to go over there and find out.
Or
I don't know
it
if
would be
that would
hard
be.
to. Yeah, I'm not sure how one would go about that. But
Yeah,
hey, if you're listening and you're the person, no.
yeah. I guess what also attracted me to this story is that Mary wasn't somebody famous.
No.
She wasn't well known, probably, and during her time, other than the people who asked her to play at their weddings or went to mass at cathedral. But in some ways, she was so important, and I think she taught me a lot, and the people who helped her taught me a lot that, it pays to be kind and to help someone through a very difficult time. That must have been I can't imagine, after all those years, it's almost 10 years since he died by the time she got to see
Okay.
his grave. So kind of reopening old wounds or something, or maybe
Mm.
putting it to rest that she knew he was well taken care of and that there were people there who wanted to make sure he was taken care of. But she had a very sad life in a way because she lost her husband so young and she had all those kids and 17 grandchildren, I guess,
Wow.
when she
Yeah.
died in the 60s. She had 17 grandchildren. She had the 7 kids. 2 of her sons had joined the Jesuits, and they were brothers, not priests, but they were brothers, and, they served people and
That's
did good
wonderful.
work. So, yeah, but she's not exciting, she didn't change the world, I guess, in some ways, or even the city or anything, but she gave her son.
She still made her mark, though.
Yeah, and I like that, and I really do think I need to take a trip over there and
Go
visit
see
his
for
grave.
yourself and see
Yeah.
see who was taken.
Yeah, those are the people that I think are the strongest people in the world that can survive that
Yeah.
and just go on and, something good comes out of it in the end.
I do have a bit of a fascination for people who take care of cemeteries like that. I know
Mhm.
there are some local people who work through the website findagrave.com, and they go
Yeah.
around and they visit different graves and they clean them off and they mark them and they make sure that it's entered into the system so
Mhm.
people who are looking for their relatives can find them. And it's
Right, and it must be nice to know that, like, if you're far removed from where
yeah,
someone is buried, you can look on Find a Grave and you can find out that people care,
yeah,
that they're not there alone, people are there who care enough to devote their time to doing something to take care of it.
yeah. I did a
And
story on that once upon a time, and it was just fascinating to talk to folks about like why is this so important to them to do for strangers,
right.
people who they have no connection to, but how they would want their relatives to be cared
Mhm.
for.
That's what I think. I hope it inspires people to think about this more and
Yeah.
think, is there something like this I could do to take care of somebody's grave whom, there's lots of people.
Yeah.
Nobody left, nobody even knows that they're buried here, and it's a good thing to do, and this story's touched me almost more than any other story I've ever researched, and I don't know why, I just don't know why. I don't know if it's just what a loss. War is so stupid. You take 21-year-old who has his whole life ahead of him, and there it is, and he dies like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm glad somebody remembers him.
Mm. Terry Pratchett wrote once, and I'm paraphrasing here,
Mhm.
"Man is not dead as long as his name is spoken aloud.
Right.
Those who know him or those who care for him still speak his name."
Yeah.
And with caring for these graves so long after this has happened, I mean, this is going on, this is probably what, 80 years now
Yeah.
since
Mhm.
just about his legacy continues on,
Right.
despite,
Even if he had lived, he would not be alive now, probably,
right.
because 'cause he'd be over
A
100
lot of,
years
yeah,
old,
we're
yeah, and
losing so many of our World War II.
yeah, there's nobody left
Very
anymore,
few.
and I really truly do believe since I was raised by World War II era parents and knowing my relatives and my parents' friends that they truly were the greatest generation. I don't think there can ever be any dispute about that.
Mm.
They went through so much with the Great Depression and then the war, and all I remember of all those people is how kind they were, how funny they were, and how they never mentioned the war. So, we need to remember them and what they gave, and especially like Mary. this was the ultimate sacrifice. Your child, you gave this so the world could be at peace. You gave this child. And I just find that so touching. And I love that she was able to make a contact with someone who obviously cared about him as much as she did, almost, really and truly. Because this woman rode her bike 17 miles to get to the cemetery. She came over. When she came over here, she was interviewed by the Telegram.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to learn a lot about, I don't know, about her personally and all this. But what it turned out to be is she kept talking about all the marvelous conveniences that we had in the United States. And this was post-World War II, and we were living the good life after, the war and the Great Depression.
Right.
All those tank factories had been turned over into making refrigerators. So she was very impressed by that you didn't have to go to the store every day and buy your food because you had refrigeration. But in other ways, she said, she loved her country because family was so important and all of this. But she rode her bike 17 miles to take care of these graves.
Wow.
Because they didn't have a car. They walked most everywhere. They lived in a small village near the cemetery. So that was her contribution. So.
All right. I guess next time my dad obsessively rewatches Band of Brothers, I will have to pay more attention to the fourth episode.
I loved it so much when I watched it the first time. I thought, I have got to own this. And I really do. I'm just, I don't know why.
he just watches it a lot. And
I've only watched it.
It gets to be much.
But it is great. It really tells you the truth. It does not glamorize war at all.
It absolutely does not.
Yeah. So I was surprised and I was glad to find out that battle was covered in it. I didn't remember it from watching it. Your dad probably would have known.
He probably, yeah. He's kind of the expert on that one. I'll go home this weekend and probably have it playing on some channel for 24 hours because
it's the 4th of July.
It's the 250th. It's probably going to happen.
Got to remember all these people.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What do you hope people take away from learning about Mary Chapman and her son?
Don't forget people. Don't forget people and what they did. And it may seem small, but it really wasn't small. It really wasn't. And that just a kindness, like making sure a grave is taken care of, what a difference that made in people's lives. You knew that somebody was taking care of it, but you established a friendship too because of it. A friendship across the ocean, which is amazing.
And the fact that we're still talking about it today.
I know. And the fact that the only way you could contact people was through letters. And how long did that take?
They didn't find each other on Facebook. Right. That's incredible.
Right. It is incredible when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that more fascinating. I think people should do it all the time now since it's so easy to communicate. You don't have to wait for that letter, like 2-3 weeks, whatever it took to come from Europe, especially post-World War II Europe. It was pretty
slow.
Yep. Yeah. So, I think people should stop and think about what they can do for people that will mean so much. And it certainly did to Mary and her family, I'm sure.
And it wasn't a huge act, but it's
an act.
It's a meaningful act.
You're right. And she would also put flowers on the grave. So just like a mom would, or a family member would take care of somebody's grave, she made sure that he didn't miss that part since he was going to miss the rest of his life. But so.
All right.
Simple stories are the best, I think.
I agree.
They give you inspiration for your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here and sharing this story with us today.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening to Archive Dive. New episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like for us to explore, please email me at tcadeau, that's TCADEAU, at superiortelegram.com. I would love to hear from you.